Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Don't mind me if I'm a little bit like doing this a whole bunch. I was making pasta earlier in the week, and I went to taste a noodle, like to make sure that it was done, and it was like one of those hollowed out noodles, and I blew on it a little bit, made sure it was cool, but when I bit in, boiling water on my lip. So, idiot me. That's what this is going to be for, and I'm one of those people that when you have like an insect bite or a pimple, I'm a scratcher is what I like to say. So that's why you'll often see me doing this, because I get scratchy very often, especially with the long beard. But don't mind me. That's what this is right here. And that's been, that's a fun part of my week. It's been an interesting week for me because everyone who frequents my channel knows that I go through these like phases where I'm kind of like more in my head. And I'm not able to produce as much or produce things that I'm quite content with. I'll often start recording videos and then I'll get like a percentage through and then just put it aside because I'm not happy with it. And that's been kind of eking in again, which is weird because I have so many ideas boggling around the mind of things I'd like to do. But fortunately, this time I've been able to kind of give myself a bit of direction. So I've been able to put out 2-3 videos a week, kind of quantify that that's the amount of time I need to spend working on content, and then still produce something that I enjoy producing. The YouTube channel is doing fantastic because of the popularity of the game being, surging as it has been. And as such, there hasn't been as much pressure to put out a video, every day, every 2 days, whatnot, while still being able to produce content that I was planning on making anyway. So it's been this really awkward phase of kind of being like unable to really like, I need to sit down and do this and whatever, and not being able to like get in the mindset to do it, but also getting like in there just frequently enough to get like a couple of things done throughout the week. And I'm much more content with that than getting nothing done at all. So that's where I'm at this week. I'm kind of bleh. And we'll see if that kind of carries into the next week. I could go into more about that, but I don't think it's really too super important for the video itself, because I'm sure we've got some questions that people are looking for answers to. So with that, let's get started with the Q&A. Thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon who support the channel. They don't have a particular reason to. All my content is free, available here on YouTube. That has always been the case. That will always be the case. And that they do it anyway. So I thank them. And thank you to our patrons of darkness, Khuja, Jenova, and Kurenai Oni, who've gone above and beyond. So thank you to them. And thank you to all of you for tuning in. Let's see what the Q&A has in store for us this week, shall we? All right, first question, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy, hope your week went well. Can't complain. All the Pixel remasters are done and 100%ed. I started Fantasian on Apple Arcade finally, and that's been going pretty good so far. I've been playing more and more Monk lately, and I'm falling in love with the job all over again, but this time I'm hoping to play it more properly, and one thing is tripping me up. Refreshing Twin Snakes every 2 combos and Demolish every 3 sometimes throws me when I end up overriding one or the other if my attention wanders. If you have any advice or tricks for keeping track of them, other than to check the relevant bars every combo or so, or does muscle memory kick in after a while? Definitely a big muscle memory thing with these. It's funny because I find more often, especially when I was first learning Monk, and when I see other people learning Monk, is the opposite habit actually happens, where people can't stop themselves from using Twin Snakes more frequently than they should and missing True Strikes. You're actually on the reverse of that, which, considering it's a damage buff, is probably the worst end of the deal to be on. Muscle memory should kick in with that sooner or later, but that doesn't mean you can't do other things to help. Changing the way that your buffs and debuffs are set up so that you can see them more visibly, or even the buttons, your combo buttons, making sure that they're more visible to you, so even when you are wandering a little bit, they're still kind of closer to the center of your attention. That's what my UI is designed to do, and honestly, I've been thinking of adjusting it for a few jobs, but keeping things closer to the center of the screen has always been kind of a cheat code for me to get around focusing too much on one thing and not focusing on something else. But that doesn't always work for everyone, so you might have to try a few things out, but I do think muscle memory will eventually kick in, and you'll get used to the idea of doing Twin Snakes every other combo. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, Happy. Hope you're doing great. I'm doing as good as I'm gonna do, and I hope the same for you. Got a question for you about Genshin. I got a friend who wants to get into it, but is convinced that you have to spend money on it in order to get the most out of the game. Just wondering what your thoughts are on this. He also watches you, and I'm sure he'll know that this was asked for him. Let me read this. Also, not a question about adding to the PS5 client thing. Okay. Using it since it was available, had 0 problems, didn't really have any issues with the PS4 client, not game related. Holy FPS drop on stairs thing, I didn't even know it's a thing until you mentioned it. Thing I personally enjoy is almost 0 load-in times. Yeah, I've seen, so there's some other comments in the comment section that talk about the PS4 version versus the PS5. I'm going to let those discussions kind of just take place because, again, I haven't played on either, so I can't really offer the proper expertise. But as to the actual question, So do you have to spend money? So Genshin is, like most gacha games, is designed to make you want to. That is the thing that it does above all else. It presents you with a character or an item that is only available for a limited period of time, and if you don't get it, you don't know when you can get it again. Now, do you need that character? Do you need that item? No, Genshin is a pretty easy game overall. There's only one thing you really need stronger characters, or I guess a better variety of characters for, or maybe a stronger weapon for, and that's the Abyss. The Abyss is kind of like the ultimate end game, and once you have, I guess, a few different teams that are just kind of kitted out for it, most weeks you'll kind of just breeze through, maybe struggle with a few bits, especially if you're someone who really wants all 36 of those stars. But other than that, you don't need any of the characters or any of the weapons. I mean, that's how I was able to go from not pulling on a character since November and saving up all those gems until this summer. Like, if I needed all those characters and I needed to spend money to play, then wouldn't I have been hard stopped in all that time? Wouldn't I have come across some struggles? Was I easily clearing 36 stars in the Abyss every time? No, I wasn't, but it didn't matter. It was 50 or 100 gems I wouldn't get, and that would be the end of it. I'd miss like 2 or 3 stars occasionally on the last 3 floors. And I didn't really care that much about that because it wasn't worth the struggle or the thinking about it or the extra energy. So no, you really don't need to spend money on Genshin, but people want their waifus. And that's what makes them want to spend money. I mean, you could say the same thing about Fate Go or, you know, any of the other gachas where people are just trying to collect the characters because they're cool and they're new and they're hype and, you know, they don't know when they'll be back or they're limited time or whatever the reason is. But you don't need to. That's a very important thing to distinguish between. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Hello, good sir. Hello. Greetings from Belgium. I hope you have a better or well-rested Monday than the previous one. Yeah, I'm pretty okay today. I've slept pretty well. Finally, my cat Ivy, she's not torturing me in my sleep as much. She still kind of sleeps close to me, and I wake up in the middle of the night a few extra times. But she's not like, I can't move in the bed most of the time, which is what it's been like now that Ivy is finally sleeping in the bed with us. First off, I would like to thank you for your amazing content as a returning 14 player. Glad you enjoyed it. Really helped me out on several aspects of the game. Someone who took a break from 14 at the end of 5.0 and returned to finish the story before Endwalker, an occasional dive into Eden through the Duty Finder. Needless to say, things went horrible. I failed nearly every mechanic, died multiple times, and couldn't for the life of me figure out where I went wrong. My question is there a way to anticipate telegraphs, distinguish safe spots faster, or a matter of simply knowing the fight? Are there any guides or YouTube creators you recommend that would cover these topics? This is one of the videos I'm planning on making. Talk about having ideas in my head. Being able to quickly identify what a mechanic does at first sight is something that comes with a lot of experience. When you stop playing the game for long periods of time, they may have introduced ideas or mechanics or thematic ways that bosses do mechanics that you might not recognize. And that, of course, leads to, you know, not being able to see it and go, oh, that's where the safe spot is. For example, I'll use E1 as an example. So there's a point in E1 where the boss will teleport to one of the 4 corners, turn around, and start casting something. Anytime a boss or an ad or something goes to a corner or a side and starts casting an AoE, it's very likely something that's going to hit the entire room. So you want to see, oh, can I actually squeeze in behind this thing? Is there space against the wall? Is there space in the corner? Maybe it's something we can't avoid. Okay, if it's something we can't avoid, then maybe it's a room-wide knockback. Oh, we all died. Maybe the tank needs to be the first one hit. You know, you just basically go through like a mental checklist of all the things you've ever experienced before and try to piece things together. Now, that doesn't always, you know, work 100% of the time, but understanding what happened after the fact and then being able to go back and do it after that is really the more important skill to have. It's kind of expected in 14 that you'll kind of get blindsided a little bit, especially as a newer or returning player, by things that you haven't seen before, because as you've said, you haven't seen them before. So that's really it. It's a little bit of experience, a little bit of calling on that past experience, and a little bit of just accepting you're going to die and to recognize it after the fact and then understand how to do it the next time. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello and good morning. Hope you're well. Hope you're well as well. I've loved Shadowbringers content as a whole, however, I feel like one of its weaker aspects has been the reward structure. A prime example of this is DRS, which outside of the first time completion, feels like a step down from not only BA, but DR normal too regarding rewards. Do you agree the reward structure for the game is beginning to feel a little stale or lackluster? If so, what improvements would you like to see? Actually, the only place I would criticize is DRS. That's the only place I would criticize reward structure in the entirety of Shadowbringers itself. And that would have been the example I gave you had you not given me the example itself. I still don't know why none of that stuff is sellable. You should really be able to sell plates or the finished augments or anything, really, from there. I mean, the fact that you can gain access to a Kirin's Osode and a Vermilion Cloak before ever stepping foot into BA is a huge buff to people who are trying to do Eureka for the first time, got a little bit of spare cash, or even just, you know, someone who wants to get those items before they go into BA itself. You know, you're able to kind of boost yourself up in a way that it feels really good as a player to make those investments. And DRS doesn't get that. DRS is entirely you don't need these things to beat it, and thus you'll only get these things if you can beat it. And I personally don't feel like that's the right approach, and I would also echo that for most other contents in the game. Now, I think when it comes to raid gear or anything that is symbolic that you cleared something, or at least things that are a little more important, I think it's a nice balance to have some things that are only obtainable inside, such as in the case of DRS, the Cerberus mount, versus having things that you can purchase on the outside, like a piece of gear or an augment or something like that, that will help you not only in that content, but in other content that is attached to that same exploration content. So, I think DRS is the one thing they need to look at and go, we didn't get this right. Memoria also being an extra EX trial. Basically, all the things they tried to tack on to the normal way of doing exploration content didn't have their reward structure done right. Do people want that dyeable AF gear? Yeah. But by the time you've introduced it, you didn't really give us any other reason to do it. You know, a mount in that is pretty much mandatory. I mean, that's what they do with every other trial to maintain its relevance, because often people don't need the weapons that badly. And they just kind of missed that mark with Memoria, probably due to resources or something. DRS feels like it's the same thing. So I think that when it comes to creating exploration content in the future, and they have these little tangents they like to go on with an extreme trial and with a raid, that they need to reassess, because there's just essential things that those types of content are trying to do and trying to motivate you with that are missing entirely. Everything else, though, I think was done perfectly fine. Final Fantasy XIV is very much not about rewarding you necessarily for doing the game, but to give you something to commemorate that you did complete it. Normally, that's a piece of like Savage gear or, you know, a normal mode piece of gear, but it's rarely about the grind. It's rarely about getting that reward. It's about making sure that you had a good experience along the way. And I think that's something that's probably going to continue into Endwalker. This one didn't have the hashtag, but I saw first time asker as I was scrolling through, so I guess I'll stop and grab it. Hey, happy first time asker of questions on the good old YouTubes. Hello and welcome. Question for you on encounter design. I'll do what I can. Do you know if Yoshi has ever came out and said which difficulty of content is designed first? So unfortunately, as much as I'm sure he has, I cannot source you something, which makes me kind of apprehensive to say yes, he has said it. But I'm almost positive there's been a panel where it's been discussed that they will often create the more difficult version of the encounter and then prune it away. That's easier to do than to make a really easy encounter and then stack stuff on top of it. Ultimate kind of faces that kind of struggle where they've already made encounters and they already know the mechanics those encounters have, and now they have to determine how they want to represent that many mechanics in one encounter as they possibly can and tune up their difficulty. So Ultimate Dev usually takes quite a bit more time because of that. But the good news is they have at least the basis for the mechanics already set. So they save time in one way, lose time in another. But we're almost certain, and I'm almost certain there's an actual sourced interview that is out there that I just can't remember off the top of my head, where they talk about creating the more difficult fight first and then pruning it back for normal modes and whatnot. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Hab, and good morning. Long time watcher, couple time asker, but first time asker of a lore question. So I have a bonus of the Endwalker Omega mount. I'm sure Ethis is dialing in to see what I get wrong here. So let's see what we got. It's Stormblood, so I'm not gonna worry about the spoiler. I really only care about more recent stuff when I'm doing this too carefully. My question is in regards to Midgardsormr. Do you believe he'll be involved in Endwalker in any big way? Would that be the reason we were told the Omega raids were recommended to do before Endwalkers? And so far, that's where his plot ended and might pick up in Endwalker MSQ. Yeah, it's pretty ambiguous, so I'm not worried about that being at this section of the track. I have to sneeze super bad, and I apologize. Also, ever find out the big secret of Silver Tier? No, but we're assuming that that's going to be what 6.0 finally touches upon. We thought we were going to hit it in 5.x, but it seems like they might have saved that for the big finale with 6.0. I mean, his sixth kid is about to be a very important adventuring companion with us, and I'm hard-pressed to believe that they won't make him wake up in some way. Now, how they decide to do it, I'm sure if you've done Omega, then he just tells you that, he's rested long enough or something like that. And if you haven't, it probably just shows up and it says something probably very similar to it. But the thing is with Midgardsormr is one of those characters that is very central to the plot of Hydaelyn, specifically of Hydaelyn, because he's been a long time ally. He's allowed to take refuge on the planet because Hydaelyn allowed it. And as such, he's been this guardian on the source, and he's a major import, even though Hydaelyn doesn't intervene with things like the dragons and mankind fighting for the 1,000 years during the Dragonsong War. But that being said, because he's an extraterrestrial being, he also is likely a gate into other things that can be happening after 6.x. And we still have one child, we still don't know where they are. We have Vritra now, so now we know Azdaja is still somewhere out there. And the plot lines that they're involved in, I mean, again, these are Midgardsormr's children, and his brood is likely to not be just completely over when we're done with this. Because, again, they are extraterrestrial beings. They are not from this planet. So, I have no doubt Midgardsormr is going to come back into the fray. I think they're going to try to bring as many characters back into the fray as they humanly can. And I'd be shocked to not see him among them. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, you doing all right? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Long-time viewer, first-time asker. By the way, my question is about Final Fantasy XI. Do you think it has value as a mainline Final Fantasy game, or do you see it more so in the vein of being an outdated game? Someone who only got into it after having spent a lot of time with 14, I actually quite like it. It's become one of my favorites. I know you obviously don't dislike 11, because you have some ire towards it. So my ire towards 11 is less ire towards 11 and more so recognition that it is dated. It's not just outdated, it's just dated. Like, things about it just don't mesh well with the current age. And in their attempt to kind of take it from the old era into the modern day, you kind of get this mishmash of things that are kind of quality of life and modern, but then there's still like that old style stuff that just doesn't mesh well. Honestly, a big thing with 11 is people who treat it like it's the greatest thing that ever happened. I got away from that. 11 stole a lot of my life, I like to say. I don't say it absorbed it. Sounds like Aloha's causing trouble in the other room. It stole a lot of time because I didn't understand what I was giving up to participate in that game. Nowadays, I'm older. I have more experience with the gaming industry, with video games in general, and with what the modern era can accomplish. And I won't allow that to happen again. I'll dive back in occasionally just to get stuff done, maybe things that I never did way back when that were super frustrating. But going 7 years without getting a hat drop and like obsessing over attending something twice a week, every week for years to not get the thing that I want, I will never applaud that and say, oh, that made it so worth it. It didn't. It was a hat that barely increased my fucking stats. And yet it was that was supposed to be something that was like notorious. Like, I was supposed to be some hotshot for having something like that. Oh, cool, that dude has that. Or, you know what I mean? It's just I've gotten over this whole pedestal that it was on. Because it was on a pedestal for me when I was growing up. But it's still on a pedestal for some people. And I just refuse to accept that. That's really the big thing for me with Final Fantasy XI. Can I still enjoy it? Can I still log on and have a good time? Sure, but it's within a limited capacity. Because I understand what my old relationship was with that game. And what my relationship with the game should be should I ever reapproach it. That being said, to answer the question, I think it does. I think that while some stories fall really flat and are products of their era, like Rise of Xylart, honestly is kind of not a good story, but it sets up a lot of stuff that happens later. And it's not even like A Realm Reborn not good. I mean, it's just like barely anything happens, and then it starts really strong, then nothing happens for 7 missions, then something happens, then nothing happens for 4 missions, then something happens, and nothing happens for 5, and then it's over. So it just kind of goes. And some of the early stories aren't particularly interesting in the modern era. They're kind of generic RPG-ish. But that being said, things like Chains of Promethea, things like Seekers of Adulin, Treasures I think is okay. It's not my favorite. Honestly, I could take it or leave it. I'm not a fan of Wings of the Goddess at all, but that's probably more due to its release schedule. And then there's a lot of little side stories that are either endearing or expand the world. And I think that world is a strong one. I think at some point we will see a Final Fantasy XI offline, similar to what they're doing with Dragon Quest X, which doesn't mean they stop making the online game, but they make an effort to permanently preserve it in such a manner that if somebody were to come by later and go, I want to play all the mainline Final Fantasies, there's a method of doing that isn't the MMO itself that's still being updated, and they can hit all the major story beats with that. And I think they should, and I think they will, and I think it's worth it. And if anyone wants to play it for the first time, yes, it will be dated. Yes, it will make you Rue the day you decided to do it. You're going to need a second monitor or a phone or something with the wiki page up at all times, and I would highly advise ignoring a lot of the super hyper endgame related stuff that you may get recommended along the way. But if you just want to play for the story, it's not too bad to get through, and I think it's worth doing. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Yo ho ho. Mr. Happy, what'd you call me? Hope they'll wait till Endwalker isn't driving you as bad as it does me. No, it's not. I've been, like I said, both in my head and then also busy when I'm not in my head. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on Blue Mage 7, what your thoughts on Blue Mage 70 are, whether that be here or I have an upcoming video. Did I not make a video? Well, thanks for reminding me. I never made a video on that because I thought I did. Specifically, what you think of the expanded roster of tank healer spells and what the devs seem to be changing the intent for players switching from doing the Mass Carnival to do the Blue Mage log. I think what keeps happening with Blue Mage is they keep realizing there's a piece of it that that's facing a relevancy issue, and they try to address it. The Blue Mage log, their ability to properly group up with other players and farm spells, the ability to farm spells in the first place. And it feels like they've just tried to make them feel more and more broken, and it's working. Whenever I play Blue Mage, I feel like I'm absolutely stupid in like the greatest of ways. And it's a lot of fun. It definitely goes to show that this is something that is in no way achievable if it was a balanced regular job, which is exactly the reason they said they wanted to make it limited in the first place. That being said, with every step forward they take, I think Basic Instinct was a massive step forward for level 70 Blue Mage. And some of the other spells that they get are super awesome to have, especially if you are getting into group content, that they also blunder. You know, there's no way to play it in a lot of the content where you'd almost want to play it. Ultimate level players want to be able to do an all Blue Mage Ultimate. It's not the people who don't want to do Ultimate that want Blue Mage Ultimate. It's the people who already do it. And yet they're worried about like people feeling like their accomplishments are, you know, undermined. I'm not gonna lie, bro. The sales and the Party Finder already do that. Like, nobody cares about wearing a legend title anymore. The weapon looks cool. Nobody I know who is a legend gives a shit that they're a legend anymore. Not a single person. When they first beat it, they're really proud and they might turn on the title, but it's a fucking joke because they do nothing about the sales and the Party Finder, so there's all these fucking characters with legend titles that are out there. And not to mention that you cannot wear that legend title and try out a new job. In fact, it's almost risky to wear the ultimate weapon and try out a new job or any of the ultimate weapons, because as soon as people see that, and if you are anything short of what looks to be the absolute perfect godlike player, you will get shit on in a way you never thought was possible. Like, people say legend, by the way, that's like the baseline, but people get way more serious about it than that. And so it's already completely compromised. Just let Blue Mage do it. Just let them go nuts. That being said, Blue Mage is fun. They should be allowed to do Ultimate, and I'd like to see it expand into other content. I want Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High. You start as Blue Mage with one spell, and you have to learn the spells as you travel between them. A Blue Mage Deep Dungeon. I want that. All right, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hopefully, when you're ready, read this. It's okay. Never mind. You get some rest without being a cat pillow. Yeah, it wasn't much of a cat pillow last night, thankfully. First off, thank you for everything you do. Really appreciate the hard work you do every day with your videos and live streams. Thank you. My questions, sorry for multiple ones, is what role do you think is best for first-time players doing Ultimate? I think DPS is dead brain, actually, in a lot of them. I always say ranged physical in T makes you forget you're doing Ultimate. Like, it's that freaking easy. Uwu, not so much. Uwu as a monk, I really didn't feel like I had to put much brain power into it. Ukab, I mean, so Ukab kind of forces you, regardless of role, to kind of put your brain into it. But honestly, the Bahamut phase is so frustrating in terms of optimizing damage. 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off, 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off. They're probably ranged. Melee is almost frustrating because, like, actually, you know what? Now that new Monk is around, it probably isn't that frustrating. Because last time I did it, we had Grease Lightning, and that just was super freaking annoying. DPS is probably the absolute easiest, followed by Tank. I know some tanks say they're so bored in Ultimate. But some are, like, stressing out of their mind. So one of those two, I would personally say range physical is probably the most dead brain. Honestly, probably the most dead brain role in the game as someone who mains that role because I pay attention to my Twitch chat too much. I can admit that. I can admit that. What's it called? What Ultimate do you recommend doing first? I recommend doing Uwu. Honestly, it's barely even harder than your average Final Savage fight. It questionably even is outside of the final 6 minutes. Followed by T. T is really front-loaded in difficulty, but the back end is way easier to chew. And then Ukab kind of has the opposite problem, where it's not too bad to progress the front half. You'll definitely wipe a bunch on Twin and Nail. But then when you start learning trios, it like hard stops you. You get to add phase, it hard stops you. And you're probably going to die to Golden a few times, even though there's a few ways to get through it pretty easily nowadays. So I think that order. I think Uwu, T, Ukab for what's currently available until we get the fourth one in 6.1. And can you pick any? Yeah, you pick any weapon with the totem after clearing. So you get the totem, doesn't matter what you're playing, and then you just choose which one you want. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hope you are doing well. I am doing well, and same to you. What is the fastest way you recommend for getting a full 530 gear for all classes without the hunt? Okay, that was going to be my answer. Hunt trains on my data center are usually running when I'm not on. I was thinking alliance raids. Well, oh, you mean, okay, so my brain was definitely doing it dumb. I was thinking about just foregoing collecting upgrade materials altogether. Quick bonus, just clear T this last. Okay, well that actually, your final statement here actually helps me a little bit. Last Friday's wondering what your thoughts are on reruns. I have to do re-clears again tonight. I just want to be done with T. I have such bad experiences with T. This experience was good, but my initial Prague experience just kind of salts the whole thing for me, where we did okay the first week. Then somebody was removed because they just couldn't keep up with the rest of the team. Then somebody left the next day because they got into a disagreement with somebody. Then 4 days later, one of our tanks left. And the next day I was like, you know what? At this point, we've already had to replace half the group. I need to step away from this. And that really killed I just associate it with not a good time. Because that whole week where like people were leaving or being kicked, that's why I had to get out of there. I was like, I honestly, I can't keep progging with this group because it's just getting worse and worse as time goes on. So I can't stand doing reruns. I think it does get better. I think it's easier to take it in stride when you're re-clearing ultimates, even when you're screwing up and wiping. But I just want to stay the hell away from T, in all honesty. But because you're doing T, I mean, the answer is Savage. It's just Savage Party Finders is the answer. That's what I'm doing right now. Very hit or miss, but I'm certainly doing it. I took Black Mage into Savage today. That was a time. And I don't think a single wipe was my fault. So, you know what? I'll take... Oh, no, one was. I died right before VG2. But that's because everyone was dying before, and we even hit VG2 with Echo. It was... In that moment, it was my fault. But it's things that happened up to that point. But yeah, Savage. Just clearing Savage. And just go get, like, don't worry about Bish, just get the gear, just win all the pieces, get the books, whatever. But if you could do T, you could do that. Just do Savage. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps. I don't know why I added an A to the hey, but you know what? Hi. How you doing? Been following the channel for years. Keep up the good work. Thank you. And hopefully I do continue to do good work. Last week you said that Final Fantasy IX was your third least favorite, alongside 2 and 3. That would imply that you prefer 13 over it. I was kind of shocked to hear this, as many other people would consider 9 their favorite, or at least rate it quite highly. What is it about the game that causes you to dislike it? It's rare I find someone who doesn't like the game. Love to learn why, and I'm afraid of... I know that I like to say this as a content creator. I don't like... The term influencer is accurate, but like I don't like to believe people take what I say and make it their own opinion. But I feel like I have actually influenced people into disliking Final Fantasy IX. Because if I think back to my childhood of playing Final Fantasy IX, I don't remember a bad time. You know, I remember, accidentally going up the well and running into a dragon. I'm not going to knock that. That's happened to me in other RPGs. I remember playing Tetramaster and not really being interested in it and moving on. Okay, I remember the red light, green light section as an Oglop, and I go, I don't ever want to do that again. And then I remember the dumb stuff. And then I played it again as an adult. And I've been cursed with knowledge about that game. Because I understand the game better now, it makes me like it less. Like, did you know in Final Fantasy IX, your level up stats it goes through a formula. And that formula is influenced by the armor you're wearing. Any stat bonuses you have from armor will factor into your per level stat gains. It doesn't tell you that in the game, but that's how it works. And I don't like that in any game. There's some old school Final Fantasies that do the same thing. I don't like it there. I don't like it anywhere. But that's not like a major thing. So let's go into a few details, since I don't even have a save file for Final Fantasy IX to make a video about this. Like that's how much I've kind of stepped away from playing that game. So first of all, the default combat speed is the worst of the PlayStation 1 era. The starts of the fights, the rate of the ATB, the rate of the animations. If that game didn't have a speed up, I could never play it again. What the heck is happening with the light in here? All of a sudden it got mad green. You know what? Just here's what we're doing. while I'm making this point. Here, watch this. Cut the veil. That's right. Break the illusion. There you go. Okay, so without the speed up, the game would be unplayable to me. And it's not just the combat. Traversing around the world feels slow. Combat feels slow. Mini games like Chocobo Hot and Cold, in my opinion, unplayable without the speed up. It's one of the worst mini games. Tetramaster, also worse than Triple Triad. One of the worst mini games in the game. Some of my least favorite sections of the game, mention the Oglop one, but it's far from the only one that I don't like in that game. I have an issue with the characters. I don't like any of the characters. Zidane is probably one of the better protagonists. The rest of the cast other than Vivi, I don't care. I don't care about Quina. I don't care about Emerant. Freya starts off strong and then they just leave her in the dust after a little while. Garnet, I don't care. I don't care about the villains other than Khuja, and even he's still kind of, I just don't like any of them. And there's so many sections of the game that just feel padded out and I can't stand it. Okay, moving on. The game's ATB system. So ATB is, at this point, has been around for several games by the time 9 comes out. So not only is it slow by default, but it's not the only way the game tracks combat. So most RPGs do this, but they don't do it in a way that we can actually experience any sort of gameplay change. Where there's an in-game clock and an ATB clock. And generally when an ATB fills up, the in-game clock stops. It's how it tracks things like buff timers or debuff timers or things like that in games that they wear off over time instead of wearing off after a certain number of turns, which is something you would see more likely in like an old school, turn-based, everyone just takes as much time for their turn kind of game. This game does not use them together, which means there's some stuff that really sucks because of it, and then there's some abusable stuff. The thing most people would probably abuse is auto-regen and auto-haste, where you can use Garnet to summon like Bahamut, and during the animation, your regen will be ticking the whole time, and you'll heal to full. It also makes things like Mighty Guard and buffs completely worthless if they're not auto. If you don't set them to auto, if you don't have a skill to set them auto, armor to set them to auto, whatever, they're rendered worthless. Because the game is so slow that the 2 minutes that something like Mighty Guard lasts, it can wear off in the middle of an enemy attack. A great example is the Hilgigas. You're supposed to use Float to avoid Quake there. Float can wear off in the middle of the Earthquake cast, and there's nothing you can do about it, because it's the buffs and debuffs are happening on the game's internal clock, which does not stop when the ATB stops, or when the ATB cannot be charging or in the middle of an attack. So again, I'm just cursed with too much knowledge about that game. For me, it doesn't feel good to play again outside of speeding it up and just trying to get through it as quickly as possible. I don't like the characters that much, most of them at the very least. The few I do like them, but not enough to enjoy the whole game. The mini games are just awful between Chocobo Hot and Cold and Tetramaster. Some of the sequences are just padded out, and this happens in 7 and 8 too. The PS1 era is a super padded out era of Final Fantasy, which is why none of them are in my top when it comes to my favorites. There's a lot of issues with the PlayStation 1 era Final Fantasy games that do not hold up to this day. And it's just, the more I think about it, the worse it is. However, I will say this. It's still way above Final Fantasy 2. And it's still way above Final Fantasy 3 3D. Final Fantasy 3 Pixel Remaster was okay. That's above all of these. This is definitely, I like that 3 pixel remaster better than 9, better than 2, better than 3. 3D, I should say. But man, 9, my bottom 3 just give me a headache to think about. Okay, I need to detox from that last question. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Happy, hope you're doing great. I'll be doing better in a few questions when I forget about that last, just thinking about Final Fantasy 9 so much. Anyway, why do you think Square Enix is not making more outfits, hairstyles available based on old Final Fantasy game characters? To me, this feels like a huge missed opportunity. A lot of players would gladly pay. So it's not as simple as just, we're going to do that. A lot of the time it's the matter of the number of characters has to be rigged for, and the different rigs that they have to set them to, and how they'll actually look on those different rigs. So that's more than likely the main reason. They're not just saying, we don't want to do that, or they're not thinking about it, because they have gradually added them to the game in various ways. But they are not just adding them they're not just adding them willy-nilly. There's sometimes a style that they can add that is easier to design, program, make sure it doesn't clip, whatever, in the game than those old hairstyles. Hashtag Mr. Happy days. Sorry. O and P are next to each other on the keyboard. It's fine. Hey, how's it going? Hi. You've been enjoying cooking as of late. Talk about some cooking with Mrhappy videos at some point. So cooking has actually been something that has kind of leveled me out a lot, both mentally and physically, because I've been definitely eating and treating myself better as of late because I've actually been cooking. So a big thing with me is I got into being a content creator, and that was at a time where video games were pretty much my main hobby. You know, the gym was a pretty major part of my life before that, but after an injury and I couldn't go anymore, I found I was going back to spending a lot more of my time just playing video games or, you know, connecting with people through that. And so when I got into this, and for, you know, years and years and years, my main hobby was also my career. And as such, the only way for me to disconnect from all that would be to just not play video games, but that was my most major hobby, so what do I really do? So I have this like energy about me that can't be spent. There's a creative energy that can't be spent and is blocking up. There's just personal energy, and then it just kind of wears you down after a while. So now with cooking, when I step away from the computer and I'm in front of it and I'm chopping vegetables and I'm sauteing something or I'm throwing something in the oven or whatever it is, and I'm thinking about the time, making sure it's cooked right, looks good, whatever, it basically acts as my venting period. Where, you know, I can get some sort of creative outlet that isn't the thing that I do for a living, but I'm also getting a lot of enjoyment out of. But the big thing is not then now integrating that into my career again. Yes, I will post it on social, I will talk about it, and it'll be something that I can share with people, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the expectation. Oh, when's the next happy cooking video? Oh, you know, when's the next happy cooking stream? You know, okay, what's this new recipe you're working on? Are you going to make a video on this, make a video on that? I get that with my career every day, and having cooking as kind of like that thing that I can share with people but isn't necessarily a piece of my content is really, really good for me from a mental health standpoint. So I can separate the two. I can actually finally separate two things from each other while still talking about it passionately on the content that I already make. So that's the main reason why I have no interest in that. And not to mention, for our kitchen space, that's neutral space for my girlfriend and I. You know, both of us can go in there, and there's never a worry like, oh, is he live streaming, or is this for some sort of content that he's making or whatever. It's neutral space all the time, so we never have to worry about, you know, what's actually taking place in the kitchen or reserving time slots for our own kitchen in our own home. So I think that's also an important boundary to have, and one that I will most likely maintain. And that was actually close to the last question. Not the last question, but the rest of them I can kind of take in kind of like a lightning round, I suppose. There's a good morning in there. There's a question about how many servers have crafters, which is kind of weird. Somebody telling me that I should make a BA video because Discord resources aren't for everyone. It's like, yeah, like I mean, technically you're right, but if I can't perceive an improvement, I'm not going to try to make content that I don't feel adds something to a community. And those resources for BA are way too good for me to want to feel like I'm almost diluting the pool, because this is coming from people who don't just know how to do it. They know how to do it the best. And that is an expertise I feel like is super valuable. And even if it's dense and difficult, it's way more valuable a resource than anything I could offer. So there's also a question, have I ever pugged an ultimate? No. No. Here's the thing. The people who can pug that stuff and who have successfully pugged that stuff have willpowers of just titanic proportions. I so quickly get bored of doing the early phases of fights because I'm not like an orange gold parser most of the time. I will learn this mechanic and I will get it right 99% of the time. That is like my one thing that all the time I'm always looking to get that clear. And when I go into pugs and this mechanic gets screwed up and then that mechanic gets screwed up and then this one, I'm just like, woosah, woosah, woosah. Don't get toxic, woosah. And so pugging ultimates is the most room for stuff like that to happen. Now, it's entertaining from time to time, but I don't think I would ever pug an ultimate, even as a re-clear. I don't think I would ever do it because I don't think I can put my brain through the hardship that comes with what ends up happening. It's entertaining for a little bit, and then it's like, I need to stop doing this because it's driving me nuts. Somebody was asking about Mrhappy via headgear. They haven't said anything. So If they are planning anything additional, then we're unaware of it at this point. Do you think they'll ever fix mount size for Lalas? What? I mean, there's nothing to fix. They're just scaled. Some are scaled proportionally and some aren't. And that's all there is. So there's no fix for that. That's just some they scale to the Lala size and some they don't. That's all there is to it, really. Let's see, more comments about the PS5 client. There's somebody talking about positionals, how positionals make up at most about 4% of your DPS. Again, I don't like to quantify it based entirely on percentage, because when you give people percentages that, like, 4% sounds kind of low, and it is. You know, it's 1/20th of your, or I'm sorry, 1/25th of your DPS. That's why I don't do math on camera. And that sounds like it's not that major. That's why I like to quantify it as it's like you just didn't press a button this one time or these 2 times or whatever it is. Every 15 seconds, it's like you didn't press a button. Because for me, the idea of telling someone that essentially it's a lost use of a skill is an easier way of translating it in such a way that makes people want to actively improve in that regard. That's a big thing for me, is not presenting it as, oh, it's not that bad, and more so presenting it as, well, you know, it's not like it's the end of the world, but this is the price. You know what I mean? So I guess it's just different ways of looking at it the same way, because what you said is completely accurate, and if you miss a positional, it's not the end of the world, especially if you're only missing one. It's nigh indiscernible. But the idea of striving to do better, which, if I recall last week, the question was that, like, was more like, can I ignore them? And it's like, no, you don't want to do that, because, and especially because the mentality of, like, starting to look to ignore things, like, you start to look for excuses to ignore things more and more, and then that can really be a slippery slide of personal progression when it comes to improving at any aspect of the game. So that's why I saw that comment and I was like, yeah, I feel like if I told someone that, though, they'd be like, oh, it's only 4%, fuck it, I'm just not going to do it. And I definitely wouldn't want to put that mentality into anyone's head. And I don't think that's even what the intent of the comment is. I think it's just giving it quantitative perspective, I suppose. Then there was job quest lines. What do you think are your personal favorites among the epilogues? I really like that Fordola gets to appear in the Summoner one. The Dragoon one, actually, I really enjoy. I was surprised across all the 80 quest line how much I really liked the Dragoon quest, because I'm not a big Dragoon fan altogether. The Monk quest line, I really would have liked to have seen had more to do with Stormblood. I think there was a huge missed opportunity there, even if it kind of ties into Vdargelt's ancestry a little bit more. But man, I wanted such bigger things for Vdargelt because I'm a huge Monk fan. But even still, it is really enjoyable, especially the 70 quest at the end of Stormblood. I thought that was a great quest with Vdargelt. And all the other Monk and Pugilist characters that you get to fight alongside. Easily one of my favorite level 70 quests. So yeah, Monk, Dragoon, Summoner are kind of up there for me, in my opinion. And with confirmation we're getting of role quest lines again, do you think we'll interact with our old job storylines? I don't think the role quests will. I think we will get level 90, like one-off level 90 job quests. And I think they even said we were, if I'm remembering correctly. You know, the next kind of epilogue or whatever you want to consider that quest. And then, of course, we'll get Reaper and we'll get Sage job quests as well, like traditional ones, you know, like 10 levels worth of job quests, essentially, for them. And I don't think the identity of each job is lost. I think the idea for me, with even if we didn't get level 90 quests, is you really have established that identity. Like, every set of 10 job quests, it's a matter of how good the story they're trying to tell is. Like, Warriors, Stormblood quests, they were mildly entertaining, but did I really feel like they pushed the Warrior story ahead? No, it just kind of started to feature the characters from the Warrior quest line, less so than actually made me feel like I was understanding Warrior any better. And I think that at some point you realize that you really do understand the job, and that while I'm really interested to see what the next thing the characters do or the next thing they're involved in, that I don't think they need to keep telling a story, and that just being a Dragoon at that point or being a Monk at that time is satisfying enough, because I've seen the end of it. And it's rare you get to say that in an MMO, and we're going to get to say that in Endwalker with the Hydaelyn Zodiarch arc. So I'm really looking forward to that. What else do we have? Because my throat's starting to get a little scratchy right now, so I should probably get through the rest of these pretty quick. Blue Mage, there's the Final Fantasy XI, Midgard Sormer. People are thinking about the Astra rework too much. I think so too. I'm not going to rule out the fact that Astra could get a more significant rework than I think it'll get. But I'm not like going in thinking, oh my god, it's going to be a nigh indiscernible job from what it is now. I think that they're going to get rid of the shields. They'll probably still give them something. They'll adjust any of the nocturnal effects that are already on things that you have while you're in Diurnal. And that, honestly, I just want to see them change Sinistry at this point. I don't like Sinistry at all. But I don't think it'll be that significant. In all honesty, I think they'll just get rid of as many shields as they can. They won't have the ability to swap through it. And Nocturnal Sect will live on through, like, some of their other skills, like we have Divine Benison on White Mage. Because Nocturnal Sect is important to the lore. I think that's why a lot of people expect it to be pretty considerably reworked. Because removing the ability to play a Nocturnal means they need to integrate it into the lore somehow. And I think it's just going to be Nocturnal Shields to be on a few skills. And that'll be the end of it. And I don't think they'll actually rework it all that much. There's a lot of spider phobia things. I'm glad to see people commenting on that. Because, again, it wasn't my expertise, so I didn't have much to say about it. There's the person from Belgium. That's the Genshin question. The I'm falling in love with Monk. I feel like I'm missing one. I've scrolled through them all again. And yet I feel like I've actually missed a question somewhere. And it's actually really bugging me. Let me do one last scroll through, and I do this on video. I mean, you guys can now see, like, it's kind of what I go through when I'm reading in between the questions. I just kind of look at things. Somebody asked, why don't you just make a video that says there won't be a BA guide? Listen, I can't ask people to read the titles of my streams or the descriptions of my videos. There's no chance that releasing a video gets that question to stop. It just won't. It just won't. Some people talking about what they're working on in the game. There's more Arachnophobia, Dark Souls, Discord resource. Yeah, I guess I didn't miss anything. I really feel like I did. Maybe there's like a comment that's not showing for some reason, like YouTube won't. I don't know. I thought when I was reading through, I saw something else in there, but I guess that's the end of this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Thank you for watching. Be on the lookout for more of those So You're New to Final Fantasy XIV style videos. I am going to be doing different ones for the different DPS. Melee and ranged physical are likely to be first because I have more expertise, but I am diving into Caster a little bit. I've been playing Black Mage and Savage, and I'm going to be playing it in Ultimate soon. So I might have a little more input when I go to talk about that than I normally would. So we'll see how that goes. Be sure to ask your questions for next week's episode in the comment section of the video below. And thank you again for tuning in. I will see you all in the next video or in the next Q&A. And until then, take care.